good morning again to all of you. Thank you for joining this EGEC webinar. Today, the webinar is to release our market report about the market 2024. First, I need to start to thank many people. Thanks again for the 4 sponsors this year to support the work we are doing to make the market data collection, reporting, and analysis. So thanks Green Therma, Ignis Energy, Innovaterm, and SLB. Thank you again. Thanks also to all EGEC members, because with all your support as EGEC members, we are able to do the work we are doing today. You will see in this year 2025, we have seen other market report in geothermal. It's you to tell us what is the value of our market report in comparison to others. In the 15th edition we are raising today, we have unique data, thanks to the contributors. And you will see today that we have added special chapters to even give you more information. We hope that you will enjoy this 1 hour and a half webinar. What we will present to you today is first, what is the situation in the electricity market? Let's say we start to have some good news in this market, and Emile Martini, my colleague, will present it to you, and it will be illustrated with a case study. So 2024 in development, a 2025 inauguration is the United Dawn project in UK. After, we'll present you where we are in geothermal district heating. Giulia Cittadini will present this chapter, and we will have it illustrated with a case study of a project in Romania. Then we will have Sanjeev Kumar, our policy director, to present you the situation in the heat pump sector, in the geothermal heat pump sector. And you will see some lessons learned from 2024, hoping a better market in 2025. I was referring to new chapters in the edition of this year. We released today the market report, 2 new chapters. For the first time, we report you a situation in 3D seismic surveys. We were monitoring this market last year, and indeed we decided to report to you in a full chapter dedicated to where we have seen exploration surveys and what type of surveys to do some analysis. It will be illustrated with notably the 2 exploration campaign done in France with the Geoscan project. I was promising you a second news in this market report, and the second news is about drilling market forecast. I know that many of you were expecting a better market in 2024. We try in this edition of the market report to do a forecast for 25 and 26. You will have possibility to interact, use the chat, use the questions, and in the last part of the webinar, you can open your mic and ask a oral question. With that, I close the introduction, and I will give the floor to Emile. But before, be aware that the market report is 3 elements. The key findings available for everybody. It will be published today. The full market report with the annexes where we list all the projects with the details, temperature, flow rate, number of wells, depth, capacity, production. The annexes also is only for EGEC members. With that, I give the floor to Emile for the first chapter on geothermal power. Emile, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Philippe. Good morning, everybody. As regards geothermal power, as Philippe was mentioning, the European geothermal electricity market, let's say, is slowly recovering after a few years of stagnation. The main obstacle in the last few years has been the lack of stable regulatory support, especially in the biggest market, such as Italy and Turkey. And then, although the EU electricity market design is recognized in geothermal as eligible for public support, the implementation is still pending, especially around the design of auction and strike prices. And in addition to that, in the last couple of years, there has been a dropping of the electricity demand, which is now slowly recovering in 2024. And Also, the ongoing conflicts nowadays are starting to elevate energy security to a top policy priority. So now geothermal is becoming more and more important in terms of broader consideration of systemic energy solution. Next slide, please. So given these premises, I'm putting them into numbers. We can now say that 3 new plants became operational in 2024, 1 in Austria and 2 in Turkey, for an additional capacity of almost 40 megawatt electric. You will find more information about these plants in the market report, but just to give you some information, the biggest one are the 2 in Turkey with 11 and 24.5 megawatt electric. The turbine manufacturers you can see are Orkan, Open Mountain, and EGEC. It's important to say, as I was mentioning at the beginning, that the Turkey market is now developing more and more. You will find in the market report more information about the fact that the Turkey General Directorate of Mineral Research and Exploitation has published an activity report which says that now in Turkey there are more than 50 total geothermal licenses, and 70 new geothermal licenses were granted in 2024. Next slide, please. So to put all that into context, we can now say that the total capacity of all over Europe as regards geothermal power is over 3.5 gigawatt electric. And in total, the operational plants are now 147. And in terms of generation, it's 20 terawatt hour per year and about 7 terawatt hour per year if we consider only EU countries. Next slide, please. You will also find some consideration about the market outlook towards 2030. There are approximately 50 geothermal power plants that are planned at different stages, with 2 additional projects that are started developing in 2024. And if we talk about the one under investigation, we have 193 geothermal power plants that are being investigated in different countries. You can see, for example, in these 2 tables on the left, the biggest market. I already mentioned Turkey and Italy, in which now the legislation has changed, and geothermal electricity. We expect geothermal power to be developed more and more. But we also have Germany, France, and Croatia, for example. And as regards the emerging market, maybe a special mention to Hungary, because Hungary is experiencing a resurgence of interest in geothermal electricity generation, with 15 projects currently in development, with a combined expected capacity of over 40 megawatt electric. But it will be interesting to see that in the whole chapter, all the new emerging market, especially the one that are not yet producing electricity, such as Greece and Spain. But we also have interesting developments, for example, in the UK, for which we want to present you a special case. The United Downs power plant, then Giacomo Ruffo-Menghetti from EGEC will now present to you. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. Nice to meet you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I will show you the presentation. Can you see my screen? No?
Yeah, now we can see your screen. Not yet present.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So nice to meet you. I'm Giacomo. I'm the sales for Geothermal for Europe and Africa in EGEC. Today I want to show you and present you United Downs EGS power plant. First of all, I want to just a brief introduction of Exergy. We are an Italian company. We are ERC provider. We have 2 workshops, one in Italy and the other one in Turkey. We are innovative with our radial flow turbine ERC market that probably most of you already know. So I don't want to bore you about Exergy, but our head office is in Italy. Everything is made in Italy, engineering, management, commissioning, and everything. We have also the another subsidiaries in Turkey for the Turkish project. So this is our radial flow turbine. It's in the market, it's already known thanks to its high efficiency, to its radial development. We can reach high level of efficiency and also high level of availability. That is an important matter about the geothermal sector, since this will increase, of course, the electricity production along the year. But now let's focus on the United Downs project. United Downs, it's an EGEC system, so it's based on the enhanced geothermal system that is not the same of the conventional one. So this type of geothermal could increase the geothermal production worldwide, since it can be adopted in the sector, in the location in which the traditional and conventional system cannot be adopted. The enhanced geothermal, the important thing is that can be used for the base load capacity worldwide. So this plant is very important also, let me say, to give an help to the development in Europe and also worldwide about this technology. The United Downs power plant is based on 40 liters per second brine heat source at 170 degrees C, as you can see from the table, and exploiting this resource, we can reach 3 megawatt of gross power production power plant. Of course, we are tailor-made ERC provider, so during the development of the power plant, we optimized the best configuration to reach the higher level of net electricity production. And doing this study, we supplied a single pressure level air-cooled condenser solution to reach the 3 megawatt power plant in order, let me say, to reach the best optimization in terms of power and cost point of view. So you can see that the power production of United Downs plant is 3 megawatt. Then we have a reduction to reach the net production due to the fact that we have, of course, the ERC auxiliaries, and also we have the consumption of the pumps related to the geothermal part. So the downhole pump that is not in it's not being supplied by Exergy, but it's in the client scope of supply. And we have also the reinjection pump, because for the EGEC system, the client needs to reinject the brine at a higher pressure. So these the EGEC system, the problem is that have additional consumption with respect to the conventional geothermal system, due to the fact that the brine needs to be pressurized before the reinjection. So this will reduce a little bit the overall net production, but we can reach, as you can see, a high level of gross efficiency of the power plant. Just some information about the EGEC system. For United Downs, we have a production well that is 5,000 depth, while the injection well is, if I remember, 2,500 of depth, and are very close to each other. But when they go below the surface, they will have different direction in order to develop the heating. Now, which is the status of the power plant? We started the site activities between the end of 2023 and the start of 2024. In the middle of 2024, we started the erection activities, and now we are in the final phases of the commissioning. So by the end of the month, the power plant will be in operation, and we start to produce electricity for the grid. The power plant is, as you already know, a 3 megawatt power plant. EGEC supplied the complete APC, so we supplied, of course, the RC, but also the gathering part and all the BOP related to the power plant in order to complete the entire the geothermal power plant. What is an important thing that I want to highlight, that the EGS system can integrate 3 different types of requirements of the market. Which are those requirements? The first is the power generation, because having an EGS system, you can have a power plant, so you can produce electricity, but you can match this power plant also with the lithium extraction and also with the heating. In fact, in the United Downs power plant, the EGS part of the mass flow rate is dedicated for the heating, for the district heating of the houses near the plant. Part is dedicated for the power generation, and the future steps are to match the power generation with the lithium extraction, because the demand of the lithium will increase by the end of 2050, and for this reason, the client want to match the power generation to supply the lithium extraction in order to match the 2 things, so produce power, part for the grid and part to reduce the consumption of the lithium extraction. Another point is that this power plant can reduce of more than 6,000 tons of CO2, so this is a crucial point. Now I want to show you the power plant. This is a photo made some months ago. As you can see, there are the air-cooled condenser. Here there is the recuperator, the turbine with the generator, and here there are the heat exchangers of the power plant. So why is important the start of the creation of the United Downs? It's important because it can help the market to fast the development of this type of power plant with the enhanced geothermal, and can help that it's feasible from a cost and from a power point of view. So by the end of the month, we can say that the EGS system can be done in Europe and worldwide. So from my point of view, it's everything. I don't know if someone has some question. I'm here, so let me know.
Thank you very much, Jaco. Indeed, we have just a short question for you. You show us the efficiency of the EGS plant in UK. One question from Elina Di Silvestro is, what is, according to your experience with overproject, the difference with a conventional system you develop in Turkey in terms of efficiency?
Let me say, the difference between conventional and EGS, it's not related to the EGS or conventional, because the efficiency of the power plant is always related to the temperature available for the RC power plant. So, for example, in Turkey, we have the same temperature of the brine available for the ORC, so the efficiency are the same one. So it's not related to the technology adopted for the below surface, let me say, but it's only related to the temperature available and the mass flow rate, of course, available for the power plant. Another point, for example, is that in the enhanced geothermal, typically we have only brine available, while in Turkey, there are some power plants that have also steam available. So we have ORC power plant that exploit both steam and brine. Of course, the steam is gives a high efficiency because, of course, it can reach higher temperature, but from the steam, as you may know, we can exploit both its condensing phase and then the cooling of the condensed steam. So taking 2 power plants that exploit only steam on only brine at the same temperature, of course, the power plant with steam can reach higher efficiency.
Thank you very much for this detailed answer, Giacomo. I know we have to move to the next chapter.
Okay, thank you.
I will give the floor to my colleague Giulia Cittadini to present you the market report about district heating. Giulia, the floor is yours.
Perfect, thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Gioia Cittadini, I'm Policy Advisor here at EGEC, and today I'm going to introduce you to some of the updates for geothermal district heating and cooling that we reported in our market report. Next slide, please. So what happened last year? Basically, in 2024, 10 new systems were commissioned, one in France, one in Greece, 3 in Poland, 1 in Romania, 1 in the Netherlands, 1 in Spain, and 2 in the UK. All these new systems basically provided 110 megawatt thermal of capacity to the and together accounted for a total in Europe of 6 gigawatt thermal of capacity. You see that in terms of trends, new countries, new markets provided for a new system. So this is quite interesting to see. In this graph here, you see the number of plants that were commissioned in the last 5 years. In 2024, we had an increase respect to 2023, but not at the same level as it was in 2021, 2022. This is due to several reasons that we can summarize as the existing of adverse financial conditions, the delay in project development, and a longer project development duration. But in the market report, you find more information regarding these reasons that explain these results. In total, we have 412 systems in operation, and 308 of which are operating in EU member states. And we estimated that 500 projects are under development at different stages, but we're going to deep dive on this topic in a later moment. Next slide, please. So here you have this updated map on geothermal district heating and cooling reservoir with existing system and temperatures. Just to look at what happened at country level, we see that France and Netherlands maintained their leadership position. France was operating 80 plants, while Netherlands 33. But we see interesting developments also, for example, in Switzerland and Denmark that extended their portfolios with multiple projects. This is a new trend that we are seeing in this specific market. And we also saw Romania increasing the geothermal share in its district heating mix from 8 to 11%, so quite impressive increase. Estonia is also planning to explore to add more capacity in this regard. Next slide, please. So if we have to look at what's going to happen in the next year, ideally also to 2030, we are currently seeing, as I already mentioned before, more than 500 systems in development. If all these systems would be implemented, all these projects would lead to a doubling of the total number of system operation. And of course, this would increase significantly the capacity of geothermal district heating system that we have in Europe. So this would lead to an impressive increase. Also looking at member state at country level, we see that Germany has planned 100 systems that are under development. So ideally, you can imagine this system being implemented, that Germany would become the leader for district heating, for geothermal district heating and cooling system in Europe. Then if we look at other promising countries, we have Poland with 72 geothermal district heating and cooling projects in development, followed by Hungary with 47, France with 41, the Netherlands with 39. So we see a lot of that it's ongoing, also with the less mature market market, let's say, but this will lead potentially to a significant increase for this market. So, but you will find, of course, more information in the market report. This was just to give you a bit of some key inputs. But now I will leave the floor to Orion Ben, who is the general manager at Thermoline, and he's going to provide us with some insights on this new district heating plant in Stein, Romania. So I pass the floor to Orion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Horia Ban. I'm the president of Romanian GeoExchange Society and also CEO of Thermoline. I want to present you very quickly very interesting district heating and cooling based on the geothermal water and also on the heat recovery of the waste geothermal water. This is not a very big investment, a small one, but it's very interesting and it's a scalable one. Please, the next stage. Next page. So we talk about 40,000 quadrat meters that are heated and cooled by our system, and the system it's based on geothermal water, where we have around 7-8 liter per second on 52 degrees temperature, and please the next page. On this plant, we have done at the beginning a diagram and simulation of what we can do with the geothermal water. At the first stage of our heating and cooling system, we have heat exchanger for the heating and cooling for the buildings, for the 40,000 quadrat meter of the buildings, which are heating and cooling, ceiling and floor heating and floor cooling. That means that we have the water back, the geothermal water out of the system with 35 degrees. And with this temperature, we can we collect this water with geothermal wastewater, and we immerse in this. We have done the geothermal probes. With these geothermal probes, we take the energy from the wastewater and we bring it back to the system. So at the beginning, we have done also a simulation. On the site, we have also 400 kilowatt of photovoltaic panels, which are the main source for the heat pumps that recover the energy from the water. So please, the next. This analysis was done before we convinced with this analysis the client that in 6 years, the payback period of the investment will be around 6 years. Please, next stage. Next page. Now we have the first heating level is a geothermal water 52-55 degrees, 7-8 liter per second. And here we can see the immersed geothermal probes in the tank where we collect the geothermal wastewater. With these 6 heat pumps, geothermal heat pumps, we do the heat recovery. So we have at the beginning 1 megawatt of the energy directly from the geothermal water and 1 megawatt of energy take from the heat pump with a COP around 7, because the water, it's the temperature of the water is high enough for the for such a big COP. Here we can see the PV panels that assure the electricity for the heat pumps. So next. Yeah, the plant assure also the cooling. There are two modes to assure the cooling. We have done here the hybrid heat pumps that can move from water to air, and during the summer they can provide cooling by working on the air as a source for the cooling. But also, if we fulfill the tank with normal water, take from the drill, from a maximum 100-liter drill, we can do also with the geothermal heat pumps, we can do cooling inside. Here is the new hospital that it's renovated on the platform, and it has, as we can see here, the heating and cooling ceiling for heating and cooling the hospital. It's very interesting that the temperature of the water needed for the heating, it's maximum 35 degrees, and for the cooling, it's around 18 degrees. So next slide, please. I thank you very much for your attention, and what I want to say is also that even if it's around 2 megawatt power plant, it's very interesting because the scalable one, we have start also the simulation, so on the site, the owner start also the renovation of the other buildings, because there are old buildings there, and this year we shall start also to measure everything and to see if our in 1.5 year we can see if our simulation achieved the reality to can provide for further bigger investments also. At the end, I thank you very much for your attention, and I remain at your disposal for any aspects in which you feel need for clarification or other additional information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Oh yeah, indeed, it was good to present such a project, because district heating with geothermal is not one of a kind. There's a lot of different movement in the system. There's a lot of innovation. You were mentioning indeed heating and cooling, small scale, large scale, scalable. So indeed, it was really interesting for us to hear from you this project in Romania. Thanks again. And I will now move to another chapter. We have seen electricity, district heating, and now we are going to see geothermal heat pumps. Sanjeev, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Philippe. It's a pleasure to meet everybody today. If we can move on to the next slide, I will take you through some of the headlines that we had for geothermal heat pumps last year. There were 111,000 geothermal heat pump sales, which meant that the supply of heat to individuals, our houses, our offices, our factories was 10.5 million people's worth. And in a nutshell, we supplied 85 terawatt hours of heat through 2.43 million installed units, or in other words, 37.6 gigawatts of installed capacity. So this is the largest part of the geothermal capacity that we have in Europe. Unfortunately, there are a couple of things that are worth highlighting. The first one is that there was a decline in the number of sales from the year before, and this is largely down to a couple of features. The first one is that there were headwinds, political headwinds against heat pumps in general. Geothermal got wrapped up in those negative forces. There's also, increasing concern around, grid congestion and, what does electrification of heat really mean and look like? And that's something that we will have to address together with other players within this market. But specifically, the lack of the European Geothermal Action Plan really did show itself up, and we expect this to be addressed by the European Commission when they publish the action plan in Q1 next year. There are a couple of things that we wanted to specifically home in on, which will help move our industry forward. So naturally, having the zonal permitting processes replicated across every single market will make the permitting process, especially for some of the larger systems that you've heard from my colleagues before, become much more prevalent, much more quicker. There's also a need to address things like the skilled workforce, but also kind of market barriers such as the split between the cost of electricity and gas for consumers. On top of this, we have a cost of living crisis, which has been ongoing for the last couple of years with the invasion of Ukraine. And at the same time, we're still grappling with the legacy support for the gas and fossil capacity that we have installed today. We expect these things to change quite dramatically. And what you heard from the slide from the two segments before is that there's a lot of capacity that's in the pipeline already for larger scale district heating and cooling systems, most of which, or some of which, are going to have a significant impact in terms of the drivers for geothermal heat pumps. Philippe, next slide, please. Thank you very much. In terms of the overall sales for geothermal heat pumps in Europe, you can see the main markets have largely stayed in the same order that they've been in the past. So Sweden, Germany, Netherlands still had the highest levels of sales. Switzerland and Ireland are also notable markets, together with Denmark and the UK. One of the interesting things to note about the UK market is just generally for heat pumps, you have the highest gap between the price of electricity and the price of gas, yet you saw the highest growth in heat pumps, historic growth in heat pumps in the UK compared to previous years. So this, we need to understand better what are the kind of critical factors holding back heat pumps in general, but geothermal heat pumps specifically, as there may be regional variations, which we hope to understand later on. Philippe, next slide, please. Just to home in on a couple of the bigger countries, I've already mentioned this before. There were declines, but still substantial numbers of sales that were made. So, you know, the lack of policy support should flip this this blip that we had last year, and really get the geothermal heat pump market motoring much quicker. I think what will be interesting is to understand a little bit of the future trends and developments within the sector. For example, the greater drive towards network geothermal and other newer lower temperature district heating and cooling systems. Many countries across Europe are now starting to look at this market. We've covered this in previous market reports, and it's something that we're going to come back to because we expect this to be an important driver. What will also be interesting to see is how commercial buildings and municipal governments and public buildings also start to address the need to reduce energy systems. So a lot of this is all about how we get the financing, how we get the project development, but also how do we get enough people to deliver the projects on time. Next slide, please. And in terms of the overall stock, as has largely remained the trend line for the last couple of years, Sweden has the highest number of installed capacity, followed by Germany, France, Finland. I think it's important to understand the capacity per 1,000 households, which we'll come to in a few minutes. But of the 243 million geothermal heat pumps in operation, just in the EU member states, what we are seeing is a healthy desire to convert to geothermal, sometimes driven by the desire to have cheap heating and cooling. What we're also now starting to see is the trend line from distribution system operators who are very nervous about the impact on cooling loads on power grids, the impact on overall energy demand during peak energy periods in winter time. And I refer you to the second page of the Polish government's geothermal action plan, where they recognized this and said that they were going to prioritize geothermal heat pumps over other heating and cooling, renewable heating and cooling sources, not necessarily because they're the most efficient and best technology, but because they have the least impact on the energy system. As we start to see more and more thinking about making systemic investments in the energy system, specific technologies are going to become much more prevalent. One of the things that was introduced in the Renewable Energy Directive and the Electricity Market Design directives a few years ago were additional support for flexibility in storage systems. And we expect to see these payments or remunerations or regulatory recognition also being one of the underlying drivers for geothermal heat pumps in the coming years. We're waiting for member states to implement that legislation effectively, but we think this is going to be a strong driver. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, it's important to look at the density of geothermal heat pumps per size of the population. And again, Sweden stands out by some distance. Finland, Estonia, Switzerland are other notable countries. But what's fascinating in some of these countries is the kind of desire to look at much bigger projects. So, for example, in Switzerland, the airports have converted to geothermal systems. And what you're seeing, if you happen to be in Brussels, I strongly recommend it, especially during summertime, you'll see many construction sites of commercial buildings which are undergoing renovation, where geothermal is the fossil-free alternative to cheap heating and cooling systems. So it's happening right in front of our eyes. One of the structural issues we have in the geothermal heat pump market is the fact that once the installation is installed, it's largely invisible. That's still a problem, but there's clear recognition that this is the direction of travel. Next slide, please. I think that's the end. Yes. Okay. So looking forward to the discussion later. Over to you, Philippe.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev. Indeed, with this presentation, we have shown you the market 2024 for electricity. Let's say we can conclude it's a recovery. For district heating, it's a continuation of the growth. For heat pumps, it was a contraction, not expected, but we expect much more as recovery also for general heat pumps in 2027. There's no reason that this fantastic technology with nearly 100 years lifetime cannot become a mass market solution. Now, after the 2024 market, let's look at some forecasts. I was promising you some news about the future of deep geothermal, and I will now give the floor to my colleague Leonie to present you the result of our surveys on the different exploration campaigns all over Europe. Leonie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Philippe. Indeed, my name is Leonie Kuhlmann. I'm policy officer at EGEC, and now I will highlight some main results of our research on the exploration campaigns that we did. Next slide, please. So we see that in the last 2 years, there has been an exponential growth of 3D seismic exploration campaigns over Europe. 2024 was especially a record year with 17 seismic campaigns that were conducted, while, for instance, in 2023, we only found about 10 campaigns. We also see a trend in 2025 that those campaigns are increasing in terms of number, with over 10 campaigns already conducted in the first half of 2025, and several more have already been announced. This can be understood as a strong indication of a rapid growth of the geothermal sector in European countries. Especially, we see also that more exploration campaigns are required before drilling, since we already tapped into the most known resources in Europe, and now projects are developed in less known areas, so there's more uncertainty about the resource, so the need for more exploration campaigns. Additionally, we see that there's a growing interest in geothermal in general, so more projects are being developed and newcomers are joining the geothermal sectors, so also the campaigns. In the pictures, you can see, of course, the Vibro trucks used to do those campaigns, and also the seismic nodes, one of the new technologies used, given that they are quite independent and single point receivers. Next slide, please. So we have found campaigns in over 10 countries. Here you can see a list of some of those. The seismic campaigns range from a more local level, covering about 50 square meters, to a regional one, much greater than 100 square kilometers. For example, those bigger ones took place in Switzerland, but also in North Alsace in France. On average, these surveys took no longer than 2 months to complete the physical exploration on the ground, and they were done by private and public shareholders. Next slide, please. Here you can see an extract of the data which is shown in the market report. So there's a more extensive list of all the surveys that we identified for the last years. Just to highlight some information, for instance, we found a survey which was conducted in Münster in Germany, covering a superficie of 350 square kilometers. This took about 6 to 7 weeks and was conducted by DMT. Another interesting example is a survey done in Croatia, which took approximately 2 months and was conducted by Geofiske Torun. And a more local level, for example, to highlight this difference as well, was done in Belgium, in Mol, Dessel and Reti. About 40 square kilometers were covered by Vito, and this took about 3 to 4 weeks. So now you got some insights, and I'm happy to pass the floor to Alexandre Stopin from BRGM, who will give some further insights on those exploration campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonie, indeed. Yeah, I have the pleasure today to present you the GeoScan projects that have been conducted and are still going on in France. Next slide. Or do I get the next slide? Yes. Okay. So those GeoScan projects are, we have partners, ADEME, which is the agency for the ecological transition, which founded those acquisitions for a total of 5.5 million euros. And then locally, because those two projects are really anchored in a territory, one in Île-de-France with financing from Région Île-de-France, and then one other, which is in the south of France, close to Marseille, which is sponsored by Région Sud, Département des Bouches-du-Rhône, and Métropole Aix-Marseille-Provence. Next slide, please. So as we know, there's a very favorable context for geothermal exploration in general, but also in France. And but for that, and to increase those projects, to increase their numbers, we have to understand a bit more the subsurface, as mentioned before, especially in unexplored area. On the right side, you see a map of France with the major basins in which we have some. And in some of them, we have some geothermal plants operations. And you see that in the Paris Basin, this is where we have most of them, with nearly more than 50 operations, a bit in Alsace, on the northeast of France, many and then some in the Bassin Aquitain, which is in the southwest of France. But you have not much in the southeast, close to in the Région Sud. And if you look in Paris, in the Paris Basin, most of them are actually in the east and in the southeast of the Paris Basin, but not so much on the western side and in the south. And the reasons for that are that the geological conditions are not as known as, for example, in the east or in the south. So that's why there was a decision to put in place two geoscientific programs, one for the west of Paris with the Regional Council, and one in the west of Marseille with the BRGM, Regional Council, Departmental Council, and Aix-Marseille-Provence Métropole. Those projects they will include acquisition of new data, but also reprocessing of old data, and I'll come to that. There are 2 years projects. They started last year, and they will be finished for one by the end of the year. And for the one in the south of France, it will be finished next year in 2026. Some results have already been published at the end of 2024 for experts, where we have basically given reprocessed seismic data and new data. And there will be public access to the results on the project website. Next page. We have to see exploration programs or exploration for geothermal as a multi-scale projects, basically, where the idea is to first have some information about on the regional or basin scales with geological studies, geophysical studies, maybe bit cores, some information about maybe geochemical information, and such that we can have some ideas of prospective areas. And then we need to go on to local scale, maybe 1,000 square kilometers, where we start to add more information, maybe new 2D campaign of maybe passive seismic acquisition or any sort of geophysical information that basically constrain the potential areas. And then we have a project scale, maybe 20 square kilometers or the size of the doublet, where we basically think that where the state intervene basically decrease. So for the left side, it's more the state, which basically is going to pay for the campaign. And on the right side, where we are the project scale, it's more the developer or the project owner who is going to pay for the acquisition and the studies, even though they will be always, this in France, some help from the government in case of failure or to sponsor sometimes acquisition as well. And if you go to the next slide, we see that the Geoscan project is basically in the middle at the local scale. Moving on to the Geoscan Île-de-France project, you see the area of interest, which is the blue polygon. It's an area of 2,000 square kilometers with more than 300 cities that have been included in the area of interest, and it encompasses 4 million inhabitants, which is and 50% of the area is basically urban area, so with buildings and so on. On the map, you see the black dots are existing oil and gas wells. You can see that this area has been extremely explored for oil and gas. This is the reason why we have so much legacy data dating from the 1980s, maybe 1990s. And that represents nearly 1,600 kilometers of lines, of 2D seismic lines that we have used and that we have reprocessed in the context of this project. And the idea was really to reprocess them in one go, such that you have an homogeneous data set with the same datum, with the same static solution, etc., such that we have an holistic view of the area. The reprocessing was done. We also have done some reprocessing of the VSP data, if they were available, but also of all the sonic logs and sort of logging informations that we have in the wells that cover the area. The reason for that is that we want, of course, with the reprocessing of the data to push the quality of the seismic data that we get at the end, but also to push towards, let's say, processing that's being used in the oil and gas industry, like quantitative interpretation, which not only look at the structure, but also at the amplitude of the seismic data per se, which gives you information about porosity. Of course, it's not the absolute porosity, but it gives you some relative information about the relative change of porosity across the area. And if you go to the next slide, we can see one result of this process, where you see on the left side, you see a map of the Oxfordian, which is one of the units that we were looking for. And it's the top of this unit is the Sequanian. And on the left, what you can see is a map that was obtained by interpretation of all the different lines that we had. And you can see that on the left side, we have, so to the west, we think we have basically the edge of a platform, the reef platform, with better porosity, with hotter colors. Yeah? So we have better porosity on the left side, west, and going towards the east, we see that the porosity may decrease. And that's if you see the seismic data over here. On the foreground, what you have put is basically one of these transects where we have done the quantitative interpretation, which basically transforms the seismic data into some sort of a relative porosity. And we see indeed the 2D line is over here. You can see the change of the red colors towards yellowish colors, where we see a change indeed of porosity. And if you look at the event just below, which is the Horathian, still in the Oxfordian, another layer, where we see that the porosity is less interesting. So that's the first time we actually get such pictures of porosity or relative porosity in the Paris Basin. And that basically demonstrates the added value of this sort of oil and gas technologies. Moving on to the next slide, and to the next project, which is the Geoscan Arc. Well, the Paris Basin used to be a very simple layer cake sort of basin. Here we have something completely different with where we're looking into an area of a bit more than 1,000 square kilometers as well. But the pictures that you see on the right sides, they show you sort of the tectonics that we have. Basically, this area has been affected by the Pyrenean and the Alpine orogenies, which basically created lots of structures, faults, and other sort of geological curiosities. We have acquired 260 kilometers of land data, but also since we have Étang de Berre in the center, we also have 60 kilometers of marine operations. And you can see on the top right a picture of the barge that we use for this acquisition. It's the first time that we actually acquire such data for geothermal. The reason being that the arc syncline is structures that we don't know very well. There is some legacy data on the right side of the area of the zone of interest, but also on the left, but there's nothing that really goes across from west to east. And also the data quality is not that great on the legacy data. Let's have a look at the result of the survey. If you go to the next slide. We can see that here we see this transect that goes from the from the west to the east. It's more than 60 kilometers long. And in the blue in the center is basically the area where we had the marine acquisition. And you can see the structure quite nicely on the land side. And it's a data which is still looked in time. But if you go to the next slide, what you can see is the added value, what basically brings the marine acquisition. It helps you to actually connect the dot between the two land data on the east and on the west side, and helps you to understand a bit more the deposition system. And what's really amazing to see is that we have data down to 4 or to 5 seconds, which basically means reflections down to 12 kilometers, between 10 and 12 kilometers in depth, just with a single 300 cubic inch air gun, which is quite good. So very good results actually that you have obtained on this data set, and that helps us to really understand the tectonic. The data interpretation is ongoing at the moment, and really helps us to see that some of the targets that we were looking for are actually present over the two areas where there may be two projects. Next slide, please. As a conclusion, so what next for the two projects? For the Geoscan Île-de-France, which is the first project I discussed, the structural interpretation has been done. We are now looking at the cross-interpretation of the new 2D seismic data and CSEM. I didn't discuss that too much for the first projects, but indeed we also have acquired new data, 260 kilometers, and also electromagnetic data as an R&D aspect to try to understand how we can get informations, maybe also related to porosity or presence of fluid with electromagnetic methods. And now there's interpretations of the QI results that we have in order to determine reservoir properties with higher details than what used to be done. For Geoscan Arc projects, the structural interpretation is ongoing. We're also going to do some QI, even though the problematic here is that the data, the well data that could be used for QI is less present and of less quality than what we have in Île-de-France. We also have done lots of field work in order to understand the quality of the reservoir, because the reservoir is actually, well, we can see it at the surface. The question is, are the erosions and the casts that we observe at the surface the same as the one that we have in the subsurface? That's the big questions that we have to answer. And of course, when that's done, we can do geological and reservoir modeling. So results will be available for Île-de-France by the end of the year, and for Geoscan Arc by next year. But those two projects are really doing well, and we look forward to present you some new results soon. That's it for me. Thank you for your attention.
A big thank you, Alexandre. Really interesting presentation, illustrating what we were saying, that indeed we are seeing in Europe a multiplication of this exploration campaign. So I hope to see even more in the future, but indeed, after you need some time to treat the data. And what we try to do in the forecast from this really seismic is to see how come it can change the drilling market. Us as EGEC and you as actors of subsurface and the drilling industry who have been a bit sorry about the market in 2024. We expected much more according to what was planned in 22 and 23. So let's look at a bit the forecast for the next years to see how it can move. We have done a kind of a modeling of how the market can move, okay? To understand what could happen in 25 and 26. You have seen from the presentation of a market report on electricity and on district heating that you have 50 power plants under development. What is interesting to look at is that where are they located? The presentation from EGEC show you that the design of the plant is different if it's an EGS or if it's in a conventional system. We look at a bit what are the plants today in operation, what are the plants in development in volcanic and non-volcanic areas, the number of wells drilled typically for these plants. And we assume, it's our assumption for our forecast, that 10% of the wells will be drilled in the next 2 years. So for electricity, we assume that about 15 wells could be drilled in Europe. And you could see that a large majority, we are expecting them in Turkey. On district heating, we have a lot of projects in the pipe. Julia was mentioning 500. Not all of them will be developed in the next 2 years. Let's use the same criteria, 10% of them developed in the next 2 years, and it's quite realistic, seeing the movement in this business. So we speak about more than 1 wells to be drilled in the next 2 years. In total, we can assume from the market data, so if these projects are realized, about 115 wells to be drilled in the next 2 years. It's assumption from the market data. Now we did a second analysis. We confronted that with the exploration campaigns, because indeed, if market actors are investing 10 million or more in 3D seismic campaign, we expect some drillings in the next future. Illustrated by our survey, it's maybe not 100% exhaustive, but it's nearly fully exhaustive, so it gives a real picture of the system. We are identifying 40 seismic surveys. We distinguish ones done at a city level and the ones like illustrated by Alexandre in France at a more pan-regional level. At a city level, let's say for district heating, minimum a doublet, 2 wells will be drilled in the next 2 to 3 years. At a regional scale, we have been conservative. Let's say that only 4 wells, but we expect much more, will be drilled for this campaign. In total, from this exploration campaign, we can assume more, but let's say 120 wells to be conservative to be drilled. You can see it's quite corresponding to the market data extrapolation, this analysis from the exploration campaign. In conclusion, what can we assume of the market of drilling in the next year? If in 2024, we have seen about 30 deep wells drilled in Europe, to have 120 in 2 years, it means 60 wells to be drilled, doubling the number of wells in Europe. For that, we need, of course, the project to be fully realized. We need them to be realized as soon as possible. So we need a more efficient permitting process to be sure all these projects have a drilling permit in time to drill in the next 2 to 3 years. And we need to improve project management within the geothermal industry to ensure that rigs and the people are available for all this drilling activity. This was just a snapshot of the chapter. You have all the details in the market report. With that, I thank you for having joined the first part. Stay with us we have a Q&A session. And first, maybe with you, Alexandre, if you are still with us, we have two questions to you. Alexandre? No, maybe he's not yet available. Giacomo. No, Giacomo from EGEC. Okay. Oria, are you available?
I'm here, but I couldn't find any more where my
No
screen.
problem.
That's why.
Okay, no problem. Just a question for you.
Yes.
You say
we
that
are.
the data are available on the website. So the question that is public access to survey results typically open access across Europe, so not only in France, or are there variations between regions? If there are restrictions, what form do they normally take?
No restrictions. They are on. If you go on the geothermies.fr, you'll find the project Geoscan/Geoscan. You will find the page for the Geoscan projects, and then there will be a link towards close to the towards linking to the place, the website where the data is being stored. It's a BHM website called the Cupinon, and there you'll have the data available for download, and you can do what you want with it.
Do you know
Except-
about countries outside France?
Outside France, yeah, they also can take it. I mean, we don't look at the IP address to understand if it's someone from Europe or somebody else. It's public data per se, so
Okay.
it's like the data.gouv.fr where everybody can download data. Yeah, public access.
Thank you, Alexandre, for this answer.
You're welcome. Sorry for the delay in the.
No problem, no
I
problem.
couldn't find the window anymore. Sorry.
I will look for no Oria or Giacomo. Maybe the time they connect, maybe let's open the mic. Indeed, if I have some questions. Sandy, if you wanted to intervene.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up the answer from Alexandra there for a second. I think it's quite fascinating. So maybe a little bit of context. Eurogeo surveys, the geological surveys for all of Europe, are in the process of creating a European geothermal repository, all the existing geological data and kind of storing it in one place. I'd like to ask you from Alexander, from your kind of experiences, can you maybe explain to those who are not familiar with the role of a geological survey, the role of geological data, the importance that having good data on the timescales for...
Am să termină făcut acolo, trebuie să termine ăștia. Nu? Trebuie să termine așa.
Maybe that was slightly cut off there. So I'm just curious to know, is there a correlation between having very good geological data stored in the way in which you've highlighted from your presentation to the timescales for issuing permits for slightly deeper projects?
Unfortunately, there's no correlation in the data quality and the obtain and getting a permit. Of course, so that's, I mean, from an administrative point of view, it is clear that the availability of data, so ease of, let's say, the fact that you can get data very quickly, very easily by downloading it or by asking for the geological survey, for example, to give it to you, helps the, let's say, the operator to construct a case for a geothermal exploration in a better way. Let's put it this way. Yeah? So you have more data, you can really justify the fact that you know the structure, you know the environment, you can build a case to say, okay, I have that resource presence, that's my probability of success is that much %, for example. And that helps, of course, to the administration who is going to look at your report to say, yes, I think he's doing that properly. However, that doesn't accelerate the time because they take one file after the other. And what really matters is not, I mean, what matters is, of course, the resources per se, but it's more the environmental impact that's around it, especially if you go to It's the issues are more at the surface in a way. Okay, you're going to cut some trees. Okay, what sort of trees that is? Well, you have a bat over here, so you'll have to be careful with that. There's a small plant that's actually right on that dump, and it's a very local plant that only grows on that dump, and it's protected. So you have all those things these are the things that do take time, actually. Unfortunately, it's not so much the well, there's of course the subsurface and the resources, but it's the environmental, let's say, aspect is the one that takes some of the time, and also the workload of the administration, which sometimes can take between 6 months and a year or so. Yeah, so we'd like to have that correlation, but it's not there yet.
Thank you, Alexandre. Oria, you open your mic. Can we see you? Because we have 3 questions for you. Okay.
Sorry, this is
No.
Giacomo.
Yeah.
I heard that you have some question for me, but sorry, but I have some trouble with the headphones.
Let's start with you, Giacomo. First question
Yes.
is, what is the LCOE or cost per megawatt hour for this project in UK? And the second question is, what is the minimum operating temperature of the EGEC ORC technology?
Okay, we don't have the data about the LCOE because we are not involved during the classification of, let me say, of the EGS part. We have been involved only for the above surface, and we prefer to not share also the price for the power plant, let me say. But of course, in addition, we don't have also the costs related to the system provided by the client. So we have not the information in our hands. Regarding the minimum temperature, the ORC has not a minimum temperature, let me say. We can exploit starting from 100 degrees C, but going below, there is no a technical issue. So there is no a technical problem related to the power plant or to the technology. It's only a matter of performance and cost. So going below 100 degrees C, the cost will increase a lot, and the power generation that you can have from the resource could be lower. This is only a problem related to the inlet temperature of the brine or steam resource. While regarding the injection temperature, it's another matter, because of course the injection temperature affects the efficiency of the power plant, but the injection temperature is related to the technology, the composition of the brine. So you have to study if there is the need of dosing and something else, but it's only related to the resource.
Thank you, Giacomo, for the clarification. Oria?
Yes.
So there's 3 questions to you. Is that how deep are the wells drilled in the project in Romania, and what was the geology for this project?
The well was when we arrived on the site, the well was for, I don't know, 20 years old, done, and it is 700 meters. Water comes free outside. We don't need a pump, so this 7-8 liter per second, it's getting out from the earth without a pump. We only collect the water and use it for the first step in the geothermal heating, and the second step, the heat recovery from the waste geothermal water to get into the heat recovery system with the heat pumps.
Thank you, Oria. And there's a second question to you, is that did you have a problem of mineral scales when using the recovered waste geothermal water for cooling?
First of all, we have done such a heat recovery system using the stainless steel heat exchangers 7-8 years before at one aqua park here in Oradea. We had a lot of problems because of the mineral depositing on the heat exchanger. That's why we use this tank around 30 up to 40 cubic meters, where we immerse the geothermal pipes. so geothermal boreholes or pipes. Boreholes, we say boreholes, but they are geothermal pipe. So the distance between the pipes it's centimeters. So it takes thousands of years for the minerals to make some something on our heat exchanger. So it's a heat exchanger dedicated for the geothermal water, because as in Stey, the geothermal water is very clean, but we have other places where we have work and where the geothermal water it's dirt, it's full of minerals, and we have a lot of problems. That's why we have started 5 years ago to discuss about a bigger heat exchanger. This heat exchanger, it's around 600 up to 1000 megawatt one, and we have no problem years long, but also we can take out the pipe immersing in the heat exchanger, and we can clean it with pressure water if it's necessary. But I think years long we don't need to take a look on this heat exchanger.
Thank you, Oria. Last two questions, Alexandre, if you are still available.
Absolutely.
Yes, so the first question to you is, what is the overall cost of the Geoscan campaign?
Yes.
And the second question is, what is the minimum permeability / porosity which you regard as a proper one for geothermal aquifer and water exploitation?
So the first one, the cost for Île-de-France was around 2.2 or 2.5 million euro, and that's for acquisition and processing of the data. And for Geoscan Arc, there was around 3.5, I would say, or 3.3. Again, acquisition and processing. That's more or less the range of for the acquisition and processing, all paid by ADEME. And then the scientific works that goes behind, and the let's say setting up the campaign and all that. That's for both projects. It's a total of 2 million, I would say, or 1.8 or so. With respect to the porosity permeability, in a way that what matters is the product temperature and flux. So how much fluid do you get at which temperature? And so porosity and permeability, yeah, of course they are extremely important. But I think it's you may have rocks that are not to say that's super permeable, but if you have them on a large on a long net area, that at the end what matters it's the transmissibility for the how much fluid do you get. So I don't have really the numbers for that. We don't look at it this way, in a way. And maybe somebody who's who runs an operation can have better replies than mine on that subject.
Maybe I have an idea, Alexandre, that will be further discussed in 3 months from now at the European Geothermal Congress in Zurich, because here we will have hundreds of presentation sessions about exploration. I'm sure we'll find the time to also look at that.
No,
Thank you.
Excellent. You're welcome.
Alexandre, Oria, and Giacomo for your excellent presentation. In a short minute, we ask you to present the case studies, and I think it's always good to have these case studies illustrating the different chapters of a market report. I thank also the EGEC team, Sanjeev, Emil, Julia, and Leonie for a really nice presentation today, the market report. Thanks you all for attending this webinar. We had more than 300 people registered. I see that more than 12 people attending it. So really, really good to see you. Today, the key findings will be published. Next week, for the EGEC members, you'll have a full report with all the annexes. A lot of food for you to digest in your deserved holidays summer break. And as I mentioned, hope to see you all first week of October, market 6 to 10 of October, Zurich, the European Geothermal Congress. We expect 1,200 people more there. and we will have sessions about electricity, district heating, heat pumps, exploration, drilling, science, technical, non-technical activities. So hope to see you all there after summer in Zurich at the EGC. With that, I wish you a good day and thanks again to all of you. Bye-bye.